Hello and welcome to Everyday Podcast, whereas every Tuesday we explore the secrets of psychology, health, and personal development to help you reach your full potential. Have you ever felt utterly drained? Not, from physical exertion, but just from the sheer mental load of modern life. It really seems like chronic fatigue is more prevalent than ever. Today we're taking a close look at the fascinating biological reasons behind this modern paradox. We're drawing insights from recent research and expert analyses to understand why our brains feel so overwhelmed and, most importantly, what we can do about it.
Yeah, and what's immediately clear from the sources we're exploring is that the root cause often lies in this fundamental mismatch. Our ancient, evolutionarily shaped brains, perfected over millions of years, they simply weren't designed for the kind of hyperstimulated, densely social, and information-rich environment we inhabit today.
So our incredible brains, these absolute marvels of evolution, are actually struggling because they're built for a completely different era. That's quite a thought.
Exactly. I mean, for roughly 2 million years, natural selection was refining our species. But the environments our ancestors lived in, profoundly different from our current world. This deep evolutionary past optimized our brains for very specific social and informational contexts that are now dramatically altered. It leaves us, well, a little unprepared, you could say. See, our species is inherently social. It's core to who we are. Our brains have built-in mechanisms like mirror neurons. Those are specialized brain cells that fire both when we perform an action and when we see someone else doing it. It allows for this instinctive understanding and empathy. We were prepared to live within a social structure of about, say, 150 well-known individuals.
150 people, okay.
Yeah, and rarely encountering strangers for much of our lives. Our brains developed to be very precise in those interactions, but not really highly capacious in terms of the sheer number of people we could process.
Okay, this is where it gets truly fascinating for me.
Mhm.
You're saying we're actually overwhelmed by the very thing our nature compels us to seek out social connection.
Precisely. Yeah, think about it. In today's average city, you might encounter thousands of different faces daily.
Right.
Not to mention countless online interactions on top of that. It overloads our brains with company.
Yeah.
And while we naturally crave that social connection for safety and belonging, the sheer volume is just too much for our evolutionary design. When overloaded, our brains can actually enter a state of avoidance. Activity in the insular region of the brain, that's a part that processes emotions. It can manifest as aversion or even like disgust towards social situations. That feeling of fatigue. It often serves as a defense mechanism. It's a way for the brain to signal its need for necessary isolation and rest.
So that intense desire sometimes just to retreat and be alone after a really busy day, even if you genuinely enjoy people, that might actually be your brain very clearly signaling, hey, I've had enough, I need to recharge.
That's a very likely interpretation, yes. Your brain basically putting the brakes on.
And it's not just the density of human contact, is it? We're also talking about the constant barrage of digital stimuli. The notifications, the emails, social media feeds. Every new piece of information feels like another brick on an already overburdened wall.
Indeed. It's a huge factor. For our ancestors, think about it. Every new piece of information was incredibly valuable, crucial for group competence, for survival even. Our brains evolved to be like sponges, sort of uncritically attracted to novelty. Whatever was new caught our attention.
Because it might be important.
Exactly. That was adaptively beneficial then. But in today's world, with endless newsletters, app notifications, algorithm-driven content, this innate curiosity can become, well, profoundly detrimental sometimes. It leads to extreme overload and frustration.
So our hardwired curiosity, the thing that once kept us alive, is now potentially leading us astray. What do we do about that?
Well, a crucial question we rarely ask ourselves is, why do I actually need this information? Or, what is this relationship for? Developing this self-reflection, this mindfulness, it's something we've largely lost track of, I think, but desperately need to regain. And furthermore, modern life demands these constant shifts between diverse social sub-environments.
Yeah, like different contexts.
Exactly. Imagine navigating the distinct rules of the game between your family, your workplace, your group of friends, all within a single day. Our brains are forced to constantly adapt to these different roles, being a parent, a spouse, a colleague, maybe a boss, or even just a driver stuck in traffic. This constant adaptation adds significantly to our mental load because our brains just weren't designed for such frequent and varied context switching during their evolutionary development.
Okay, this sounds like the perfect recipe for what so many of us describe as brain fog. Is that a real thing, neurobiologically?
Well, brain fog isn't a precise neurobiological term, no, but it captures the feeling really well. Think of it as your brain signaling overwhelm. It's a state where, under the weight of excessive stimuli or stress, it struggles to process information clearly. And that results in feelings of helplessness, mental cloudiness, or just disengagement. It's a broad symptom indicating that something is amiss.
So it's like our brain's check engine light is flashing, telling us we need to pay attention.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. And this concept ties directly into our struggles with multitasking, our working memory, the part that handles conscious, immediate processing. It's incredibly limited. While some classic research suggested maybe we could hold about 7 items plus or minus 2, more recent studies suggest it's often fewer, maybe around 3-4 items at any given moment.
Only 3 or 4 things. Wow.
Yeah, it's like trying to view a richly furnished room through a keyhole. You can only perceive a small fragment at a time. You can shift your focus, look at different parts eventually, but you simply cannot grasp the entire picture simultaneously.
So trying to do multiple complex things at once, like, say, navigating heavy traffic, having a deep phone conversation, and mentally drafting work emails, that's just pushing our brains way past their inherent limits. How does that actually impact us day to day?
It absolutely pushes us past our limits. Our brains aren't built for high-quality, simultaneous execution of multiple complex tasks. It's just not how they work best. When you're driving, for instance, your working memory is fully occupied by traffic signs, other vehicles, navigation.
Right, you have to be focused.
Exactly. Then if a conversation demands your attention on top of that, your brain attempts to function in 2 demanding realities with a single finite working memory. The quality of both tasks will inevitably suffer. You might forget key details of the conversation or maybe even miss a familiar exit on the highway, precisely because your attention was divided. Now, it's true that routine actions like driving a familiar route you do every day can be handled by procedural memory. That's an unconscious system. It's automatic. But the moment you consciously try to think about one of these automated tasks while simultaneously engaging in another complex one, that's when you can run into trouble, potentially dangerous trouble.
So this constant societal push we feel, this pressure for multitasking, often starting right back in school, it ultimately leads to lower quality output and increased frustration, even if we feel like we're being more productive in the moment.
Precisely. Yeah, even if multitasking is perceived as adaptively beneficial in our fast-paced world, our brains just aren't equipped for efficient, high-quality, simultaneous processing of multiple complex demands. It's kind of a trick our modern world plays on our ancient operating system.
Wow. Okay, this all sounds incredibly exhausting. It makes sense why so many people feel drained. What practical steps can we actually take to help our brains cope, to truly rest and function better in this really challenging environment?
Right. Well, the first crucial step, and it's often overlooked, is self-observation, really paying attention to yourself. Because not everyone rests in the same way. For some people, a loud, energetic party is fantastic, recharges them, while for others, a quiet gathering of just 5 people already feels like a mass event. Each of us is wired a bit differently. We are all neurodiverse, so avoid blindly adopting best practices for rest if they don't actually align with your own unique needs. But as for universal, practical advice, 2 fundamental elements consistently stand out in the research for promoting well-being and cognitive function: movement and friends.
Movement and friends. Okay, tell me more about that. How do those 2 connect specifically to brain health?
Well, it's surprisingly simple but powerful. Find a person you genuinely enjoy being with, someone important to you, and take them for a walk. This simple act combines physical movement with essential social connection. That connection, as we discussed, our brains are fundamentally wired for. And for an even greater cognitive boost, try doing something new together.
New, like that.
Visit an unfamiliar place or engage in an activity that is novel for both of you. This process actively builds your cognitive reserve, like strengthening a mental muscle. And for those of us with sedentary jobs, physical movement isn't just a recommendation, it's really a physiological necessity. Our hunter-gatherer ancestors were constantly in motion, and this need for movement is deeply ingrained in our physiology. The fascinating aspect here is that the brain areas responsible for physical movement are strongly interconnected with our cognitive and nonverbal thinking areas. So activating one automatically activates the other. Therefore, movement is absolutely crucial for all cognitive processes, including how we effectively design our rest.
So if you spent, say, 8-10 hours sitting at a desk, then plopping down to watch TV for several more hours,
Yeah.
that isn't actually giving your brain the kind of rest and restoration it truly needs. It's just
It's
more stillness.
It's far from optimal, yeah. In cases like that, movement becomes pretty much indispensable for both physiological and neurological health. Our brains crave that active engagement after prolonged stillness.
Okay, that's huge. What's one seemingly small, maybe often overlooked thing that can have a really big impact on our brain's function? Something we might not even realize is affecting us daily.
Proper hydration, it sounds basic, I know.
Water, really?
Yes, really. Many people don't realize that the first symptom of dehydration isn't actually thirst. It's a measurable drop in cognitive abilities, reduced concentration, impaired attention, decreased working memory capacity. Our nervous tissue is the most hydrated tissue in the body, so even minor deficits significantly impact its function. This is why having a bottle of water readily available, for instance, for students in classrooms, or for teachers, or for anyone doing focused work, it really should be an absolute requirement. It's such a simple fix for so many subtle cognitive challenges.
Hydration. Got it.
Mhm.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit now to changing habits. Because this often feels incredibly challenging, right? Almost like our brains are actively resisting us even when we know a change is good for us.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way sometimes. And it's easy to think of our brain as something separate we need to control, but it's intrinsically us. We are our brains. So tackling habits isn't just about controlling our brain, it's more about understanding how we're wired and then working with that wiring. Regarding change, a mature brain, so typically after around age 23, 25, it tends to favor established patterns, things that have proven successful in the past.
The tried and true.
Exactly. New environments or new habits demand new solutions, and that can evoke a very natural fear of change. Conversely, an adolescent brain, which is in this constant state of flux and reconfiguration, often thrives on change. For them, rigid, unchanging rules can feel catastrophic.
So understanding why we're resistant is really key then. Like your example, if someone struggles with math, maybe it stems from early schooling where complex concepts like fractions were introduced before their brain structures were mature enough to grasp them, which is typically around age 12.
Exactly that. Identifying these underlying causes, maybe old learning experiences or even anxieties, and addressing them rather than simply forcing change through sheer willpower. That's paramount. If you fear learning a new language because of some past classroom trauma, then seeking a totally different approach, perhaps through immersion, travel, or even, falling in love with a native speaker, might be far more effective than trying to muscle through another textbook. And when it comes to bad habits or addictions, we often become dependent not just on the substance or the activity itself, but on the state of pleasure and reward our brains experience during it. The brain's reward system, which originally evolved to reinforce survival beneficial behaviors like finding food or connecting with others, can be hijacked by activities or substances that are not actually good for us long term. So, discontinuing these habits creates significant discomfort because the brain is actively seeking that ingrained reward state it's become accustomed to.
Okay, so how then can we effectively encourage and maintain positive habits when our brain seems so good at reinforcing the bad ones sometimes?
Well, we need to consciously create an environment where healthy, beneficial actions inherently activate our reward system and are socially supported. Make the good choice the easy, rewarding choice. For instance, think about jogging. It might once have been viewed as unusual, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But now it's widely seen as a positive activity, something that inspires others. The social context changed. Willpower is a genuine internal resource, yes, but its capacity and consistency vary significantly with age and even day to day. Expecting a teenager, for example, whose brain is undergoing intense reconfiguration to exhibit the same level of sustained willpower as a mature adult, well, that's often unrealistic and can lead to immense frustration for everyone involved.
So those little presents or external rewards we sometimes give ourselves for achieving good habits, they can actually be genuinely beneficial for reinforcing positive behavior. It's not just silly.
No, not silly at all. Yes, absolutely beneficial. While good habits are inherently rewarding over the long run, those occasional external rewards serve as really positive markers of achievement. They're like small gifts we give ourselves, reinforcing the path we're on. And it doesn't always mean buying something. It could simply be dedicating time to an enjoyable activity you've been putting off as a reward. Interestingly, I observe younger generations often prioritizing relationships and overall well-being over traditional career demands and just making money.
Yeah, you do see that shift sometimes.
And while some older generations might criticize this, from an evolutionary and health perspective, prioritizing friends, that is the strongest predictor of long-term health and longevity. Their choices, in many ways, might actually be more aligned with our natural well-being than the traditional emphasis on relentless overwork.
Those insights are crucial for adults, definitely. But what about the next generation? How do these principles apply to children's developing brains, especially in this world totally dominated by screens? Let's talk about children and screen time. Is there an age before which screens should maybe be completely banned?
Absolutely. I would argue yes. Human brains are born relatively premature compared to other species, and their fundamental structures continue to develop rapidly until around 2 or 3 years of age. These crucial early years of development should ideally occur in response to natural environmental stimuli interacting with people, objects, nature. Screens, with their high-frequency white light and extreme contrasts, exert a really powerful and frankly, unnatural influence on these delicate, developing brain structures. Therefore, a zero-screen rule until at least 2 or 3 years of age is strongly advisable based on what we know about early brain development.
Okay, zero screens until 2 or 3. What about after that crucial developmental period? Should screen time still be heavily limited?
Yeah.
How do we manage that?
Well, look, there are no precise scientific formulas prescribing exact minutes for each age group. It's not that simple. We really must apply common sense and consider each child's individual reactions and temperament. However, it's also vital to acknowledge that digital technology will be an integral part of their lives. There's no escaping that. Attempting to completely isolate a child from digital technology, say, until age 12, that could ironically impair their social and adaptive skills in the world they're actually growing up in. The key, as with so many things, is balance and informed limits, while also recognizing the incredible pace of technological change. It's a moving target.
This all makes me wonder, our traditional education system, which was largely designed for a different era, decades ago, might it actually be working against our brain's natural inclinations and how we're naturally wired to learn?
Often, yes. Unfortunately, that seems to be the case in many ways. A renowned neurobiologist once remarked, somewhat cynically perhaps, that if one were to maliciously design a system to most effectively hinder our brain's natural learning processes, it would probably bear a striking resemblance to our current school system.
Wow, that's a strong statement.
It is, but it highlights a real issue. The solution isn't necessarily to tear everything down and build from scratch, but rather to re-embrace natural learning principles that have always served us well. This means consciously integrating movement into learning even small motor skills like fidgeting, doodling, or using stress balls because, as we said, these connect directly to cognitive processes. It also means prioritizing emotions in learning, making it engaging and relevant, and fostering environments that genuinely encourage diverse perspectives and collaboration. It's not always about radical revolution, but more about thoughtful, evolutionary adaptation within the existing structures. For example, instead of reprimanding a child who's fidgeting, maybe replacing their clicky pen with a squeezable foam ball, that could be a simple yet potentially revolutionary change for their brain's ability to engage with learning.
So the resistance we sometimes see to these seemingly small logical changes, it often comes from our own ingrained mental models, right? Our neuroplastic past. Our adult brains are just stuck in the schema of this is how school is supposed to look.
Precisely. That's a huge barrier. We often rationalize, well, it wasn't so bad for us, but maybe we thrived despite the system rather than because of it. Ultimately, the ideal probably isn't one single perfect alternative system anyway. It's likely a rich diversity of educational approaches. This allows young individuals to explore and choose different learning contexts throughout their development, adapting to their evolving needs. Because diversity in education as in life is what truly enriches us. And if we connect this all back to the bigger picture and reflect on what we've discussed today about social connection and well-being, think about this provocative thought. Recent research, which has been comprehensively summarized by experts like Robin Dunbar, indicates pretty strongly that loneliness kills more people than smoking.
Wow, more than smoking.
Yes. The consistent presence of genuine friends, that supportive social network, is the single strongest predictor of both life expectancy and overall well-being, stronger than many factors we usually focus on.
That's a truly powerful and, profoundly thought-provoking idea to leave with our listeners. The importance of authentic, real-world connection is clearly more than just a nice-to-have. It sounds like it's fundamental to our health and longevity. Wow. Okay, what an incredible journey into understanding our brains and how they navigate this incredibly complex modern world we've built. It truly highlights how crucial it is to listen to our bodies, and maybe especially our brains, to find what true rest actually means for us, and to foster genuine well-being.
And, as we mentioned, to constantly ask why. Why am I consuming this information? Why am I choosing this activity? Why am I prioritizing this particular connection? That self-reflection is absolutely key.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this insightful exploration of psychology, health, and personal development. Please join us again tomorrow when we'll be delving into the fascinating world of money and investments. If you found today's conversation valuable, please remember to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming discussions. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.